So today we have Shreya Roy with us at the studio. And Shreya is a graduate from SRCC. This year she's done her undergraduation. And Shreya is going to talk us through how do you ace your academics in college. So Shreya, before we talk about it, welcome to Education View 360.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, Shreya. So before we really talk about the different secrets of getting good marks at college, would you please elaborate about the grading system at college?
Right. So I can speak for DU because I'm a student of Delhi University. I do not know about the other universities, but how the marking is done in Delhi University at an undergraduate level is that for every subject that you have, you get marks out of 100. And then that 100 is split into a 75 mark component, which is your external assessment, which is the exam that you give with the university together. And then the rest 25% is your internal assessment. And then further that 25%, that 25 is split into 5 marks for attendance and 20 marks for the test, internal test that your professor is going to take within your class. And then for every subject, you have a different weighting that's given in the form of credits. So DU has a couple of years ago started following the credit system. So every subject has different credits, and then your overall CGPA or SGPA for that year or for your entire degree is a weighted average of your total marks in each subject, weighted by the credits that each subject is allotted.
All right. So, Shreya, since you said it is credit based, that means consistency would be very important. Like every semester you got to perform, then only it would be possible to get the overall ranking in a college. So, would you share with our students that what are the secrets or tips that a child or student must bear in mind to be able to get excellent grades at college?
Yeah. So I have a couple of points here. I think I'll start with just the 5 mark component of those 100 marks that I talked about, which is probably the easiest to bag, which is the 5 marks for attendance. So you get those 5 marks. I'm not very sure of the number, but I think if your attendance is above 60% or 65%, you get the full 5 on 5. And then progressively, as your attendance falls, you get lesser and lesser marks until you reaches 0. So those 5 marks are probably the easiest to bag because you don't have to study for them. You just have to show up to class. And then also extrapolating from that, if you do go to class and if you go to your tutes, that does obviously help you study better and helps you get marks or helps you understand the concepts better, because then you can ask doubts from your professor. There's a peer learning environment. So in DU, we have this concept called tutes or tutorials, where each classroom is split into smaller groups of 5 or 6 students, and then you have one-on-one time with the professor to clear your doubts. And those tutes are included in the attendance. So make sure you do attend those tutes, because you'll get marks for attendance, and then you'll be able to talk to your professors on a one-on-one basis, build that rapport with them, and also get a lot of your doubts cleared. So attending classes is number one. And then, yeah, as you mentioned, consistency is key. And this does not mean you need to take out like 8 hours of your day every day to study. I know that students who are coming from 12th grade have a very different standard of what consistent studying means, because I have been through that personally, where in 12th grade you just study every day, all day. But that's not needed in college. Getting good grades or being an exemplar student in college, in my opinion, is definitely way easier than it is in school. So consistency just means taking a couple of hours every day. You don't even have to study every day, maybe every week. But when you have internals, so you won't just have that 120-mark test. So it's in all likelihood, your professor is going to take 3 internals for that semester, and then they're going to take your average of best 2 or like best of 3, or it changes from professor to professor how they are going to mark your internals. But in all likelihood, you're going to have 3 internals. And let's say if it's average of the best two of your three and you've gotten great marks in your first two, doesn't mean you shouldn't, even though you have the option to skip the third internal, doesn't mean you should skip it. Make sure you study for it, give that third internal, get your internal graded, because I mean, even if you don't get good marks in it, it's not going to affect your overall grade, but it is going to help you build that schedule, that consistent schedule of studying and practicing, that you do need to eventually score for that big 75 mark chunk that you're going to have to give at the end of the semester. So make sure you give all your internals. And then let's say if you don't perform well on even all three of those and you are not happy with your score, because internal assessments are so flexible, there are some professors who are a little more accommodating than others. Make sure you reach out to your professor and say that I'm not happy with my score and you want to look for a way to improve it. In that case, if there are enough students like you, it could even be possible that the professor takes another assessment for students who want to improve their score. But again, this is super dependent from professor to professor. There's a lot of flexibility in terms of what happens with that 120 mark component. And then coming to the final part, which is the 75 mark component of the external assessment. All the studying and all the consistency that you have maintained over the semester will help you in that final assessment. For this assessment, make sure again you're going through all your chapters, you're brushing up on your concepts, and make sure you're doing practice questions and practice exams. So in DU, we have this book called 10 Years, which a lot of students swear by. You'll find out if you go to college in Delhi University that a lot of students actually do most of their studying from 10 years. I wouldn't recommend that, but it is definitely very useful. So the 10 years book has past papers from the previous 10 years. So make sure you do all of those questions, because unfortunately or fortunately, a lot of questions do end up getting repeated in DU. So you might find yourself in a lucky position where you will see questions that you are familiar with. But even if questions don't get repeated, doing past papers is super important, because it helps you think from a question answer point of view. So you can then apply that concept that you have learned in class or read about, and you can apply it to a more question type setting. And then a couple of other overall tips that I would say are that you need to maintain a balance. There are a million and one things going on in college. There's societies, there's fests, you have social life to maintain. Now everyone's like out of school and they found this newfound freedom. So there's obviously a lot of things that everyone wants to do, and I would encourage you to go out and do those things. But at the same time, it's super easy to get to sort of lose yourself in that flow. So make sure that you are taking out enough time for your academics, and there isn't a number like 8 hours or 4 hours or 3 hours. It depends from person to person. Use your internal assessments as a benchmark for yourself to make sure to assess where you stand and what your understanding of the concepts is. And then finally, I would say that, and this is a tip that might be specific to economics honors. I'm not sure if it applies to other courses as well, but in economics honors, the first year was probably the easiest to get marks in, because you had a lot of subjects that were basically repeats of what you had done in 12th grade. So you had 4 subjects. One of them is a general elective and the other is the skill building subject. So again, first year is very easy, but first year is also the time when you're probably most excited to do other things. But make sure you utilize that first year really well, because when things get harder in second year or third year, you will be really thankful to yourself if you have gotten good marks in first year, because then you can do a little averagely in second and third year also, but your first year marks will sort of pick you up for and get you a good final grade.
Right. So thank you so much, Shreya, for that detailed insight. And what you said, that it is very easy to bag 5 marks for full attendance, I think that becomes the most difficult challenge at college because hardly students attend classes. So I would say that's the most difficult thing. You got to be disciplined and very much in control of your distractions. So thank you, Shreya. And for the students, please keep sharing and liking the video for the benefit of other students also. We'll get you more such videos.